I've announced it is my intention not to contest the seat of Hotham at the next election. This was a decision that I conveyed to the Prime Minister on Thursday when he asked me to come back into the Cabinet. I said to him that it was my intention not to recontest the seat, and he should be aware of it, so that he would have two options. One, to use the position to regenerate, the other to use us in the time that was remaining to help set the agenda going forward. He rang me last night to indicate that he was going to exercise the former option, and I wished him well with the announcement today, and I think that he has got a very strong team in place despite the resignations. And I think that just shows the depth of talent that is available in the Labor Party. This wasn't an easy decision, but nor was it hard. I think that I had time to reflect on this a fair bit after the 21st of March, but I think that would have been the wrong time to go. I continued to see the need to be around to help rebuild or to try and play some constructive role. And when the circumstances of the change happening last Wednesday occurred, together I think with the fact that the early indications were a lift in our chances and the change dynamic on Thursday, that helped me make the decision. Carol, of course, we had a lot of conversations with over the last couple of months, although I must say she's been at me for a lot longer than that to make this decision, but I thank her and, of course, my family for the great support that they have been. Not just Carol and the kids, but I come from a very proud Labor family. Dad, of course, passed away some 4 years ago. Mum's still alive, and she takes a great interest. So she also, I think, will be pleased that I've made this decision. It has been a privilege to serve, and when I think about it, this brings to something of an end a commitment I've had to the Labor movement for over 40 years. I joined the Storemen and Packers Union with my good friend Bill Kelty way back then. We came in on the cusp of its time, and in many ways it's time for me today. The most exciting time that I've had in the Labor movement was those years in the ACTU, the Accord, and Bill and myself and others were so instrumental, I think, in helping set this economy up for a more resilient and more sustained period. And when you look at the 22 years of sustained economic growth, that owes a lot to the Accord. It was a mechanism that was very much the Labor movement at its best, not just drawing on the historic relationship, but turning it to economic and social advantage. It was through the Accord that we've embedded in our system strong minimum wage rates, superannuation and Medicare. All of these have been fought for by the trade union movement. So for anyone that seeks to denigrate the role of the trade union movement, I think they need to thank them for a very constructive and important role that they played in trading off wage increases to secure those lasting social benefits. These are benefits that can't be unpicked, and that, I think, is the test of good policy, because we were fought every inch of the way by the Conservatives on both superannuation and Medicare. We persisted, we succeeded, and so successful has been the program that they won't be touched. I might say I'm very pleased that this government is continuing the path that was actually announced by Kevin when he was last Prime Minister, of taking the superannuation from 9 to 12%. I, of course, entered Parliament in 1990, so I've served over 23 years in the place, and when I think of Dad's contribution of some 27 in that house and 6 in the State House, there's been a Crean involved in public life some way or another ever since the mid-40s, almost 70 years. And my brother, of course, in Tasmania. So I think it is I'm proud of it anyway, the legacy, and I know many are. So far as my portfolios are concerned, I said the test before were the things that last. Some of the things that I've been responsible for in previous ministerial roles, the establishment of the cooperative research centres, still going strongly. The establishment in the primary industries portfolio of a national drought and a national disasters policy, this still stands the test of time, along with the restructuring of many of the commodity-based industries in primary industries. As Minister for Employment and Education and Training, the Working Nation program that introduced 2 really important concepts: reciprocal obligation when it comes to labour market programs, and the training wage, which we negotiated with the ACTU, and Bill was critical in that regard as well. These provide the base by which you can connect training with competitiveness for business. We also introduced the concept of taking away from the employer the responsibility for dismissals in the case of people who weren't performing well, making that task more effectively handled in another forum. As leader of the party, I of course was proud of the fact that we opposed the war in Iraq. It did divide the nation, and as it subsequently transpired, the nation did go to war on a lie. We also fought very much the attempt to strengthen the security powers without judicial review. We fought those in the Parliament. And I must say the other thing as leader, amongst others, that we put on the map was the Living Murray plan. This was subsequently initiated by Malcolm Turnbull and finally delivered by Tony Burke. And in the case of my trade portfolio, whilst we didn't conclude Doha, we actually did get pretty close within about 6 months. But despite that disappointment, which still remains elusive, we were able to conclude the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, the most comprehensive free trade agreement that ASEAN has ever signed up to, which is a trading bloc, is a larger market for us than both China and the US. Also laid the foundations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is another regional initiative that is the way in which trade negotiations are heading. That's not a bad thing so long as they are WTO consistent. So what can't be achieved because of the circumstances surrounding the governance of the WTO, or the governance arrangements affecting all member states, is being achieved in other forms. Finally, the last portfolios that I held in terms of regional development, we did introduce a cultural change to regional development. We introduced very much the notion of localism, giving locals a say in this diversified patchwork economy, challenging them to put up proposals, not wish lists, but proposals that stacked up, getting them to identify what it was they wanted to pursue, with us providing the how, the policies and the resources to do it. Not only did localism become very much front and centre of that approach, so too did partnership, because the funding that we were able to put forward was also significantly leveraged, multiples of more than 4 times in the case of the Regional Development Australia Fund. So I'm very proud of what we achieved in the regions, and this, I think, should be a lasting legacy. I would like to see that approach embedded. As for the arts, of course, the first creative cultural policy, Creative Australia, in almost 2 decades. The last one was handed down by another Labor government in which I served, and a revamp of the Australia Council after 40 years of its existence, again established in a government in which my father served. These are important Labor legacies, but they're also building blocks, and that, I think, is the message to the colleagues going forward. Understand the great legacy and the great achievements that Labor governments and the Labor movement have achieved, and have achieved their best ones when they've worked together. That's still the challenge ahead. This isn't rocket science. The circumstances will change, the nature of the economy's changed, but the fundamental principles and the fundamental approach remains the same. As for the Parliament itself, I've enjoyed every minute of the Parliament. I'm a great Parliament person, and had the leadership change happened a bit earlier, I would have liked to have made the announcement in the Parliament on its last day. That wasn't the case, because I still hadn't spoken with the Prime Minister, and as much as I'm a Parliament person and would have liked to have announced it in the Parliament, the person that should get the first indication is the leader, and that's what I did. Who knows, Parliament may come back, I may have the chance to make that valedictory, but in the event that I don't, I say to all of the colleagues I've worked with on both sides of the House, and there have been significant achievements in a bipartisan way in that Parliament, and I've always encouraged it. I like the way in the hung Parliament the committee system has been used more effectively, and I lament at times the free-for-all in which the Parliament is perceived through question time, because it in fact does great work outside of that time. Finally, to the constituents of Hotham, I thank them most sincerely for the great support that they've continued to give me, and pretty well in all elections in increasing numbers. I think it highlights the point about localism. I've never stood just as the person carrying the Labor banner, although I've always been proud to do that, but I've also stood as their local champion. And I think the more members of Parliament understand the importance of this and champion issues within their electorate, put the politics aside, get good things done, get outcomes, the schools, the community facilities, the initiatives that really stand the test of time and last, get the issues right, and the politics will look after themselves come election day. I've also been keen to get this announcement out today, even though the Cabinet reshuffle is on the same day, for this other reason, and that is to ensure that there is a rank and file ballot in Hotham. I've been elected by rank and file ballots. I know better than most the importance of them, but they are right. You can't expect people to join a party if they don't have rights. And one of the most important rights that they should have is the ability to have a say in who represents them. So I believe that the timing is right from the point of view of the party that can renew itself, for the electorate, which can, through the party structure, have a rank and file ballot. I want to pay thanks to my great loyal supporters in the branches down in Hotham, in particular one Amy Duncan. I spoke to her this morning to let her know that I was standing down. She, of course, was disappointed, as a number of others will be, but I think they accepted in the circumstances in which I've done it. I hope they do. I'll obviously continue to work for the return of a Labor member in Hotham. I wish the new candidate, whoever that might be, well, and I will continue to campaign for them. And the final note, again, just to thank my family, the UCAS. You know, these are hard days, but we'll have a good time together, I'm sure. Thanks very much.